Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George-Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun! UnSpun!
Happy Holidays.
Happy holidays.
We almost didn't do this. We
I
We're both
know.
like,
It's like I'm wall-to-wall Zoom calls, it seems, for the next 2 days with clients, and everybody wants to plan for 2024, and you're like, don't you need a vacation or something, like take some time off? No, let's talk about the year ahead. So it's
as
fine.
you
I'm
can,
happy to
as
do
you
it,
can
but
tell by the size of my hair, I've one more TV appearance to end the year, and then I'm off. Then I'm off until the
nice.
4th. I think I don't ever remember having this much time that I've like,
That's
okay,
good.
because I'm
That's
always
good.
working on radio fill in, and this year I just went, you know what? I think I'm just gonna spend some time with my family.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah,
And
but
so this will be our last show before, and then we'll be back in the new year. I'm not sure which week, second week, probably somewhere in there. We'll let you know.
yeah, we
I
will
have to
for sure.
kind of look at the
Stay
calendar.
tuned to this space for more. Unspunpodcast.com is where you can always find the very latest from George and Jody. And how many episodes have we done now?
Is this 239? I think.
239 weeks
Yeah.
of Unspun. And this week we thought we would just have a little reflection back to the year that was
Hmm.
2023. Do you ever go like, what year is it legit? Like because of COVID, because of what we've been like, is it 2022? No, it's
I
2020.
I'm a little bit amazed that it's going into 2024 because I feel like so much that last 3-4 years were lost because of COVID, and then everything else, create chaos of whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, I just feel like that it. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older, time flies. But I feel like when I talk to everybody I know, it seems like, yeah, like it was 2019, 5 seconds ago.
Yeah.
And then we all went into darkness for a couple of years there. And it's almost like those were non-years. So yeah, I kind of forget what the hell you were in. In fact, this week I keep thinking it's Friday because it's
Right.
Christmas.
It's
It's like,
Friday.
is that
No,
Friday?
further to what you were saying there on how we were all sort of sucked into darkness, if
Hmm.
we may, right off the top here, to our regular listener or viewer, um, reiterate the fact that, a lot of us are feeling that post trauma of the pandemic and what we kind of like skipped through thanks to, an unprecedented amount of influx of government support and, people looking to one another and trying to be like, okay, we're helping each other and just making it through skin of your teeth. And then things have kind of, you know, hit a wall of, okay, well now you owe your CERB back and now you got to pay your loan back and now your people aren't, inflation's up and interest rates are up, and that, like, I'm yelling it because it feels like that level. I just want you to know that if you're not okay, that's okay,
Hmm.
and you should reach out to somebody to talk to about how you're feeling, because this too shall pass. We have all survived our worst days to get to today, and we
Yeah.
just need to keep moving forward. And if you're feeling on the edge, and this time of year can bring it out of you, I'm putting my hand up on that. I mean, it's a tough one, but I have good people to talk to, and it's super helpful. Whether you're talking to a therapist or you're talking to somebody who maybe doesn't hang in your friend group and doesn't know everything about you. Anyway, and rant, but just like, you're not alone. This too
Hmm.
shall pass. And I think that a large majority of just society on a global scale is kind of going, wasn't 2019 yesterday, and were we just told to go home for 21 days, and then all of a sudden it was 3 years later.
Yeah. And then you have all the other stuff that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And 2024, at least till recently, was looking quite dim, but I'm feeling more optimistic about it now based on some data that's coming out. But
See, let's talk about
certainly
that. Let's go with optimism first, George. Give me the data.
nice.
Come
Well,
on.
I think when we're seeing the market is a good sign when the stock market starts to bounce back. Some people may hate that, but it's usually a good sign of confidence. And I think it's been a pretty rough year if you've been a year and a half or two in the stock market. Real estate doesn't seem to have crashed, but the way they thought it might. But it's certainly slow, certainly
Yeah.
in our market where we live, because and I think you have some interesting data about that. But coming up, but I feel like I'm working on some projects for the new year. There's concern, but you know, confidence as well, and so it's just that general sense that maybe it's not. And you look at it in the United States. I mean, Biden's having a challenge helping people understand how good things are. They're not as bad as you feel, but sometimes feelings, as you touched on there, about the economy are it's a self-fulfilling prophecy too. If you don't
Yeah.
feel confident and you're then that actually causes the stagnation and stalling of the economy. So how do you build in 2024, build people's confidence back to, if you believe in the market economy and how it helps everything else, how do we build that confidence back? Why? I think we're just in the doldrums in general because of that. And I think people should feel pretty good about 2024 based on what I'm seeing. And certainly I'm really focused for my business, if you're talking about business especially, um, as far as being optimistic about 2024 on the projects that I'm working on for my own business. In fact, my
Pro-
campaign university, by the way,
yeah.
passed 1,000 private followers in our
Great.
group, with
Great.
thousand, which is a big thing. This is a private group, but anybody who's interested in politics, check it out, the campaign university. But it's a big deal, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is a good sign. This is things are
It's a very
happening.
good sign. And you're going to be teaching people how to be good leaders, which is another part of it. Because I think we are void of those in some areas. We've kind of leaned
Hmm.
in on the ugliness of even beyond wedge
Yeah,
politics, like to
no.
like gaslighting and alternate facts. And we're also starting to see, we're not going to go deep into what's happening in the United States, but we are
Hmm.
seeing some significant consequences there for some people who have appeared to be getting away with some, did you not see that? Did you not watch that? Like, there's some of those kind of things that are coming back,
The
um, eh,
Colorado
spe
decision, you're maybe specifically.
specifically the Colorado decision. Yeah, the Colorado decision where it was decided
Yeah.
by the Supreme Court there that Donald Trump would not be on the ballot for 2024 because he took part in an insurrection. And that is written into the Constitution. It's got the Trump base rallied and they're making money off of it and they're calling it all like all whatever. What I found most interesting in listening to the lawyer, while that news was breaking, I was listening to the lawyer who brought that case to the Supreme Court of Colorado. And interestingly, as the Trump supporters were saying that, voters should decide, anybody should be allowed on the ballot. Well, no, anybody's not allowed on the ballot. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not allowed on the ballot because he's not
Hmm.
born here. He was able to be a Republican senator, but he was not
Or governor. Yeah.
able,
Hmm.
or sorry, governor. My bad.
Yeah.
I always screw that up.
Yeah. You can be governor, but you
Governor.
can't be president. Yeah.
Right.
It's
And
interesting.
you know what? You know who else couldn't be on the ballot? Barack Obama. And I bet there's lots of people who would like to vote for Barack Obama, but he's already served his
2
terms.
terms.
So you
Which, by
can't
the
have
way,
another
it
one.
should be the limit in Canada,
I
especially
agree
in
with you
some of
there.
our two terms in one position is enough.
What do you think will
Uh,
happen politically in Canada in 2024?
uh, I think, well, we have a provincial election at this point. It's this split on the right, Conservatives and then the newly named BC United. I
Yeah.
just think it's a cakewalk for the NDP at this point, unless something happens. But they're just sitting back enjoying the potential election in October. I saw some polling that came out on the BC or federal Liberals, and Justin Trudeau is definitely in trouble, but maybe not as bad as I predicted that he might step down or call, and I think he should. But then I saw the polling on all his alternatives, and it was terrible. It's like
Terrible.
terrible data on anybody to replace. His replacements all do worse than him, pretty much.
Yeah.
So this is good for him, but probably bad for the federal Liberals,
Do you
that there's
think
no transition concept here happening.
do you think that the glow that was sort of there for Poilievre's Conservatives, had, we've seen recent polling that has seen that dip a bit. Do you think people are getting tired of the, 8 years of Justin Trudeau at the start of every sentence? Like, do you think
It,
he
it
needs to pivot in his messaging in order to continue to grow the base that he has seen, the things that he has been successful in tapping into?
Well, you know this, Jody. We talk about this. There's election campaigns, and then there's everything else, and nothing really matters until the campaign starts. He may have peaked for the moment, um, Polyev, but
Yeah.
I would say that his messaging is certainly more clear than what we're hearing from the federal Liberals. And time is your worst enemy in politics.
Yeah.
So it can, if you stay too long, people just boot you out. And even not even sometimes, usually it's internally. And so that's kind of what's interesting, is that there doesn't seem to be a big movement internally with Trudeau to boot him out, which makes them stronger potentially to run as is. but I think the people then go, these guys are kind of done. That's the question you always have to ask. And if the new leader, no matter what you think of Polyev, seems fresh and new, fresh and new is sometimes more appealing. That certainly was what Trudeau was, the fresh new face of
No kidding. People were
Ottawa.
over
Yeah, it was a
Stephen
cult. It was kind of like
Harper.
and it was and
They were
obviously
over it.
the antithesis. And it's funny because Polyev, you would have said, was like Harper, but he's
Harper.
not. He's actually
No.
a bit sparkier, and his stuff, his social media has been quite strong,
Yeah.
and so he's got a good marketing team behind him. That's for sure. As a marketer, I'm like, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's
That's
like the
pretty
Vegas
clever.
Golden Knights Twitter account. It's slick. Let's talk about look them up if you don't follow the Vegas Golden Knights on Twitter. They're
Yes,
so
that's
good.
right. Oh yeah, their
Um,
marketing is amazing.
let's talk about interest rates and people feeling the pinch of a 6% mortgage. And it's so funny because I do remember being a small child and my mom and Bruce moving us from North Van. Mom and I, my brother and I lived in North Vancouver, and Mom and Bruce bought a house in Tawasin because it was too expensive to live downtown because interest rates were 18%.
Yeah.
So talking about how painful 6% is, can sound crazy to some people, but then at the same time, when money's been basically free for the better part of a generation, um, people who got in at an inflated price at an interest rate, and unlike in the US where your mortgage is 25 years long, there's some real risk and vulnerability for a lot of Canadians at this level. However, Bank of Canada talking about cutting rates and hopefully bringing it maybe as low as 4.25% in the coming 6 to 12.
Yeah, and I remember my parents too. That early '80s, 22%, and it destroyed us. It did. My
Yeah,
dad was in real estate, so you can imagine. And but my first place I think was 7.5% in '95. I think it was my first place I bought, and it was a real push for me to find that kind of on $100,000 apartment at 7% was I think our
a
mortgage
lot.
was $700 a month at that time
Yeah,
was a lot
a
for,
lot.
I'm getting to feel old now. But if you've
Just
locked
now?
in, if,
It's just starting now?
ouch, your gray
I'm the
hairs
same
getting
age as you, so I
more.
can rip you for that. We're both the
Yeah,
same age, so
exactly.
whatever.
They that seven. I mean that. Yeah, I mean I have a mortgage due in June, and but it's not $1 million mortgage.
Right.
A person, a young 25-year-old who bought an apartment for 800,000 at 3% or 2.5%, and suddenly your mortgage is 8%, and you're sitting on $800,000. That's scary.
A
It's a couple
lot
thousand potential. That's a lot of money. So
more.
every percent is like on $100,000 is a lot.
It's
So
cashola. And that's a good reminder actually before the end of the year, before the last banking days are gone. If you are a new homeowner, um, and even have a little bit of something in your savings account and you're on that variable rate, um, you do have the opportunity to knock down your mortgage a little bit each year, each calendar year. So you can, if you've got a little extra, you can put a little extra. And I know a lot of people don't have extra, but
but you got to do it
you
before
got to
December
think about
31st.
it. Where when money was free, you wouldn't necessarily do that. And if you had to, you could take out of your mortgage. But if you can ease up on your monthly mortgage payments because a big chunk is going to interest,
Yeah,
talk to your mortgage broker and figure it out. And I think it's up to 20% on most mortgages that you can, knock down each year. And each year could be, today and January 2nd. It's not
yeah,
like 365 days from now. So you could, in the interim, see yourself net more by pushing some in.
that's
Just
right.
saying.
If
Yeah.
in fact, if you look at you have to weigh the odds of RSPs and all those other things and what's a better place to put your money depending on the interest rate. So I'm not going to be a financial advisor here, but definitely,
No.
lines of credits and all that stuff. Any way you can get rid of those.
Right.
But
People forget about
also,
that. People forget, they're like, "Oh, my line of credit. Oh no, it's like 1.2%." It's like, "No, it's not anymore. It's
hasn't
not."
been for a while.
No, but that's just it.
No.
People are
Mhm.
not looking. And they don't want to open that piece of mail that looks like it's from the bank. People don't want to see it.
I'm
And it's
guilty of that this month.
scary. It's scary.
I'm guilty
You
of
know what
that
else
this
is
month.
scary? George, do you have a
Yeah,
GP?
I do. I have had them since I was 21 years old. And before that, I had my other doctor till I was 21. So I've only had 2 doctors in my life.
Wow.
Yeah.
My doctor died, and
Yeah.
he was the GP for everybody in my family, like my parents. He died just as my stepdad was dying, so that
Was he
was,
old or?
no, he was
Oh,
tragic, tragic. He got E. coli and he had an autoimmune disorder and it plunked his kidney and his liver
oh, oh,
simultaneously. It was terrible, just terrible. And what an incredible human. He was just unbelievable and such a touchstone. Anybody who came to me saying, "Do you know any GPs?" I would go to him and I'd say, "Hey, this person and da da da." And you're like, "Yeah,
yeah.
sure, I'll take it on." Meanwhile, his overhead is going up. Like he's managed everything. And boy, would I be in his office in the last couple of weeks, just being, whoo, so much going on in life. And, people don't have that. And if I've got like, "Oh, what's that mole?" I'm like, "I'm not getting that checked out because I don't have a GP and I'm not going to emergency to get my mole checked. I'm not going to a walk-in clinic to
And to
get
get
to
a
talk
mole
to
check,
somebody who
you have
doesn't
to get
know
a
me."
reference from a
Yeah,
GP to go to see the mole doctor.
right.
So
Yeah,
it's a process, and they have went because I had that, and it took me 6 months to get my appointment with a skin doctor. Six
yeah.
months because so. And I'm like,
Which
well, what?
means
They say, well, it's not that bad. Like, how do
and
you
worse
know? You haven't.
outcomes, leading to
Yes.
worse outcomes. So, how
Exactly.
do we
And my doctor, he's probably he must be pushing 80. And I asked him last time I saw him, and I see him once a year. My dad died when I was 21. He was 49 of a heart attack. So I've always kind of been conscious of my body and perhaps overly thoughtful, maybe a bit paranoid. But every little bit I get checked.
Yeah.
And even when you do that, I'm always like, what? Why is that up? And take care of myself. I go to the doctor, but you still got your body sometimes just gets old. It's depressing. But
And
anyways,
sometimes, you know what, peace of mind though, like with
yes,
Gideus, with my former physician, I would go in because I'd be, worried about, a soreness here or a discomfort there, or I'm feeling kind of odd. And I'd go in, I'd see him, he'd run the test, he'd check me out. Nothing changed. He just checked me out and said, "You're fine." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I didn't feel worried about anything anymore.
exactly,
And people
100%.
need that in their lives. We need our elected officials and our tax dollars to go towards these basic things for people, for all people, not just because it's happening to me. I mean, like I said, I've been watching it happening around me and empathetically like pulling people in anywhere I can. I try and be a bit of a butterfly and who can help and who can help. And by the way, anybody want to help me? It's just
Yeah,
like we need to help each other in this way. I went and got my eyes checked because I can go to the optometrist, get my eyes checked. I do the yearly. I got a new pair of glasses. $750 later. What does the person do who has a couple of kids and all of them need glasses?
yeah,
And you're living paycheck to paycheck and you can't afford your groceries nor your rent. Okay, guys, sorry, we're just not going to see this year. What?
yeah. I know it's brutal, and I mean, I just the medications. If that I know that my one of my kids takes, it's not cheap. And you can sort of see that. I think that we're in for a massive change in how medicine is delivered. I mean, I
Yeah.
took my blood test, scraped it, put it into Chat GPT, and said, and analyze this, and it came back with exact analysis that my GP had given me on my word for word, basically what he
Really?
said about my data. And that's just me scraping the information and putting it into Chat GPT.
Do
So
you think your physician's using Chat GPT?
no, no, but
Oh,
because they
no,
know
he's
the
80,
data,
right?
they
No,
see
he's not.
4.3 here and to 7.7 there or whatever. They go, that means this, and
Right.
but I think that
That's a good point. That's
technology,
a really good point. Yeah.
yeah. So I think that, but government doesn't want to embrace that yet. They're too afraid of it. They don't the speed at which and doctors push back on a lot of these things. If you look at the pharmacists and how they finally in the last year. And full disclosure, one of my clients, I did the ad campaign for the BC pharmacist, but it took forever
Remember
to
my article in the Orca about that?
yeah, that's right.
Because
I
I
mean,
I took Brady
yeah,
into the doctor and they're like, "Well, he might have." No,
that's right.
Brady had a sore throat and I was able to go. It was brand spanking new that you could go to the pharmacy to get the strep throat test, see if that sore
Yes,
throat is strep. And
right.
I thought, "Oh, let's try it." It
And then they
probably
can
isn't. And we go in and it is strep throat. I'm like, "Okay, so the antibiotics he needs for that?" They go, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." And they said,
please.
"No, you have to go to your doctor to get them to write the prescription for the strep throat that we just tested your kid and we know he has." I'm like, "Okay." So I walk
It
across the street to Brady's pediatrician and I go in and the woman behind the desk ripped the skin off me. because she's like, "How dare you? How
Bring your
dare
kid
you
in.
go there? You should come here
Oh, I
first,
see.
and
Oh,
then we," and
really?
I'm like,
Oh, wow. Yeah, so that
"I am
mentality, and
not
it's
part
getting
of your fight,
better.
guys."
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's getting better, and it's partly because it's being driven by the government saying, and the doctors are just overwhelmed, and so they're accepting the fact that they can't do
right.
everything, and there are basic prescriptions that pharmacists can provide that are so obvious, and you can check out what that list is on the website and go ask your pharmacist. But it's that kind of stuff that took forever to change, forever. And so
Yeah.
imagine saying we're going to replace doctors with artificial intelligence.
But
Uh, you know,
going back to the initial discussion about people not having access to a GP, a lot of people, a growing number of people, I would say, um, and then not being able to access some of the simplest of things through a pharmacy. Some things have changed, but the fact that your RSV vaccine isn't covered in your medical in this province, but in other provinces it is, and the fact that your shingles vaccine is not covered in this province. We are inundated with an ad campaign that tells us we should get these things, especially when we're over the age of 65, get these things. You
mhm.
get both of those shots, it's like $700. That's
Yeah,
a lot of money.
right. The shingles one, especially. I mean, that should just
It's
be mandatory.
$390.
Yeah,
I'm just going to get it because
I
I've
did
had
this year.
one
Yeah.
I did one shot in 2019 just before COVID hit. Actually, I did it in 2020. It was January of 2020, and I got a massive rash down my back that lasted almost a month,
Oh,
which was shitty, but I mean, I did the variety telethon for Global with
you
this
had a
massive
rash.
rash on my back. I'll
Oh,
never forget it. And I was thinking to myself, "Okay, well, I guess this is better than shingles, right?"
I've
So,
had
but you got to
shingles.
wait.
Believe me, it's not nice.
Right? You have to wait in between to get your next shot, and then COVID had hit, and everybody's freaking out and washing their groceries, and I'm like, "Am I gonna go get this thing and put a rash on my back again? I don't think I am." So I've had one shot, and I have to start the whole thing over again.
Yes, you do, because you have the two-shot process, right?
And I've ordered it,
Yes.
and I'm doing it, and if it comes in this week, I'm doing
It's
it
a
over
rough one, though.
Christmas. Yeah,
It's a rough one.
it's a rough
Shoot,
one,
because
but
I
I'm
was
gonna
sick for a
do it.
couple days from it. So,
Yeah,
yeah, but it's worth it
well,
for sure because I've had shingles and that's painful.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, we're
Okay,
all
what
over the
else are we
map
gonna
today.
talk about? I wanna
We're
talk
all over
about,
the map. We got to talk about what the year in review as well, like Surrey,
that's it. Well,
Vancouver.
that's where I wanna go next because
Yeah.
it's coming down to sort of Brenda Locke doesn't like Ken Sim because they used to be like Vancouver and Surrey together are a big piece of Metro Vancouver, right? Like, when everybody's sitting around the table, and Brenda Locke obviously heels dug in on the policing situation,
Hmm.
to say the least, and when the province was stepping in, Mayor Ken Sim went straight to the communications department and put out a press release of how glad he is that the province is, stepping up here to help
Yeah,
resolve the
that was
situation in Surrey.
bad, bad communications decision to get involved in another town's issue. I mean, he's working hard to try and build friendships in Victoria, but you got
Yeah,
to draw the line on some stuff like this and let them have their battles.
yeah,
And when you look at there's a metro board, unelected board, appointed board, the most powerful governmental organization outside the province of BC in this province, and they have billions of dollars of taxpayers' money they spend without anybody knowing what's going on. And or seeing 90% of the decisions are made in camera there. Um,
yeah.
the Surrey and Vancouver are
90%
yeah,
of
Surrey
the
and Vancouver represent
decisions.
the majority there. They have control of that board, and
Yeah.
uh, for the most part, I mean, they have certainly a big sway on it. And it's interesting. I know I was just talking to somebody about this about when you talk about the next election and what's going to happen. And I really worry, especially if they're split on the right. We're going to see North versus South BC, and we're going to see north of Fraser versus south of Fraser BC. So north of Fraser being conservative, south of Fraser being NDP, northern BC being
You
conservative.
think that? I would have
Yeah.
said the other way around. I would have said south of the Fraser is conservative and north of the Fraser is
So did I
NDP.
say? I said that's what I meant. The opposite.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay.
Yeah, south of the
Okay.
Fraser, conservative.
Do you
North of the
see how
Fraser,
much
yes,
I've learned, George?
yes.
Do you see how much
Well
you've taught
done.
me right there?
Well done. Yeah, no, the Valley I think will go conservative,
Yeah.
unless
Oh
it
God,
splits
yeah.
votes, and then. But I mean, it's a long time. Kevin Falcon can turn things around, but it's going to be
Can he?
I don't know.
I
But
don't think
that stuff
so.
happening in Surrey
And
is
that's not a
a
slight against Kevin Falcon. I just think that the missteps along this way, um, people not paying full attention, he's wearing it.
well, it's rebrand. We talked about this, and I was always
Yeah,
saying,
but it's
changing
beyond the
your
rebrand.
name.
It's kicking Rustad out, and now Rustad's the
Yeah, that
guy,
too.
and now
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
rolling up, and he's like Falcon's playing a little bit of whack-a-mole with things. He's flipping on that. And, oh, it's a sparkly thing. Wait, people said this, so I'll go with that. It's like,
What's
you know,
interesting is
it
where is
doesn't
Ellis
feel
Ross
like,
in all this? Where is Ellis Ross in all this?
where
Ellis
is
Ross
he?
up in North. Rustad was co-chair of his campaign with Suzanne Anton to be the next leader of the BC Liberals. Ellis did quite well. He's been kind of quiet. He's
I
pretty
like
sort of
Ellis.
tight with John Rustad. That's that northern vote. You've got the big chunks of the region up there. Those two guys have a
See, but
huge,
what I like
huge
about Ellis
ridings.
Ross is he doesn't talk in spin. He could be a guest on Unspun and he'd actually tell us what he thinks and what's going on. And maybe he's just really good at talking and charismatic in that way. But when he talks about his life, when he talks about what he has survived, what he has been through, what he has seen in his life, the decisions he's made, why he's fighting for what he is fighting for. I mean, that, and like I say it almost every week here on Unspun, is I'm not a dyed in the wool anybody.
Mhm.
I want good leadership. I want people who are mostly making decisions that I agree with. And I'm never going to agree with everything anybody does. I mean, that's just straight up, right? You know, the great example of that is what we're watching with the park board in Vancouver. Let's bring it back to that because we've only got a
Okay,
couple minutes here
bring it
because
back to our favorite topic.
well, with the city of Vancouver and Ken Sim and people are, already starting to be like, if he says swagger one more time, I'm going to throw up. World class city. I mean, I love following Justin McElroy just for the highlighted parts of the things. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like we have to do something differently, do we
Yes.
not?
Here's what I would have recommended. I thought about
Okay.
this past week because John Cooper is going to be a bit of a problem for Ken Sim. I think he's being more aggressive. John Cooper, former
Very.
chair of the park board, legacy there with his dad and the Bloedel Conservatory and all that stuff. We talked about John a lot, but if I had been there in the back room, I would have said, "How do we get John Cooper on board with this park board change?" And John Cooper might have said, "Absolutely not." But imagine if
Yeah.
John Cooper was the chair of the transition committee to take the park board and to work with the province and talk about the future of the park board, and people would go, oh well, hold on, John Cooper thinks this is a good idea. That's interesting, because
Well, John wanted to be mayor and parks
yeah,
are his favorite thing. Is it too late to have him turn that around? That would be a cool
imagine.
that would be a cool swagger move in a world-class city. It would be a swagger move. No, but seriously,
It's
like I like a politician who can say, "You know what? I got that wrong. We're still going to do a version of that, but
mhm,
I was watching, this is super off the cuff because I was just watching the press briefing before we hit record on this with Mark Miller talking about, what the plan is to bring Canadians and relatives of Canadians, permanent residents here, and their extended relatives from Gaza, right? Like
mhm.
here's, and I can't get into the weeds on it, but one of the things that, and listening to Mark Miller, I had the opportunity to meet him away from a podium once, and I saw the person. I actually met his parents when I
Oh
was
yeah.
covering the election for Al Jazeera a couple of years ago when I was in Montreal. So I was in the room and I saw him in a lighter moment, but he is continually, it seems, one of the ministers who manages one of the most precarious files. Like he's just always sitting with something that is sensitive beyond sensitive. And here he
Mhm.
was talking about what Canada is planning to do. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're trying to do. We're going to try and get as many Canadians and relatives of Canadians out of Gaza because it's a humanitarian crisis that like nothing we've ever seen before. And one of the questions, and I'm sorry, I don't know the reporter who asked the question, basically, well, what if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? What if this goes wrong? What if that happens? And Mark Miller just calmly took a moment and said, you know what? I'm sure there are going to be some significant challenges over the course of this, but if we focus only on what will go wrong, we won't be helping very many Canadians. So we're going to focus on what we can do. And along the way, we're going to try. And I just thought, More, please.
Yeah,
More, please, of people like that.
that's
More
probably a
people like
good
that.
way to kind of end. How do we talk when we talk about 2024? Can we focus on the positive and what we can do that's good? Can we? Can we?
Can we?
And you and I talk, we bitch a lot here, on the show
We
about
do.
stuff. That's kind of, we kind of untangle this stuff that's spin and misinformation or whatever out there. And we can come across as a bit, complainy, I suppose. But in general, our hearts, I think, are in that we just want things to be better. And we
Yeah.
want people to be more honest and open about what they're doing, and positivity is a good thing, and to replace the word swagger, more positivity and more openness to a new
Less
year, and
partisanship.
more confidence in who we are and how great things are, as opposed to how crap things are. And I think that's
Yeah.
certainly a message America needs to think about, because all they have to do is look around and go, the pretty good world they live in compared to where a lot of people have to live in this world. And so let's focus on that, and really lift each other up in 2024.
He's on Twitter, people. You get more of this on his Twitter. He's at George
Underscore.
Affleck, at George_Affleck. I'm at Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance on all of my socials. And you can go unspunpodcast.com. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube and see our fabulous faces every Thursday. Say goodbye, George.
Happy New Year, everybody. Bye.